have a panel discussion lined up for you all, and we have some great industry experts. Before I introduce them, I would request the setup team to please take care of the stage setup for the panel discussion. So we are moving on to the panel discussion titled Conversations for the Data-Driven, How to Make Your Data Work for You. I'm sure this is a question on a lot of your minds, that how do we make sense on this heap of data that we are sitting on, being generated across platforms, across devices, machines, humans. I think every moment that we speak, it's like data is being generated, So it's a dynamic forum where industry luminaries converge to explore the transformative power of data. Esteemed experts from diverse sectors will delve into strategies and insights on leveraging data as a catalyst for success, and the discussion aims to uncover innovative approaches, practical methodologies, and visionary perspectives on harnessing the full potential of data assets within organizations. To start a round of introduction for our esteemed panelists who bring with them a wealth of experience and expertise, we have with us Ma'am Annapurna Kuchibhatla, Chief Technology Officer at Bajaj Electricals, who boasts over 30 years of comprehensive IT experience. Her extensive background spans across IT governance, strategy, compliance, information security, and a myriad of other critical domains. Annapurna's contribution as a consultant with Mahindra Satyam and as a CTO at LV Prasad Eye Institute demonstrates her profound insights into leveraging technology for organizational advancement. We have with us Anil Sharma, serving as a CIO and CTO, a dynamic leader with a career spanning over 30 years. His versatile expertise encompasses strategic solutions, IT infrastructure, management, cybersecurity, and successful leadership in automobile, telecom, and food and beverages industries. Anil Sharma's track record reflects his ability to drive substantial IT transformations and enhance operational efficiency through strategic initiatives. Moving on to our next panelist, we have Anil Kumar Gujja, the CIO at Pragati FinServe, who brings with him 22 years of multifaceted experience across various roles in esteemed organizations like TCS, Intel, ADP, and JP Morgan. Excuse me. His versatility from developer to vice president showcases a deep understanding of technology's role in driving organizational success. Excuse me. To save the best for the last, we have Mr. C.K. Prasad, Executive Director, RailTel, experienced technocrat, administrator, business head, author, and professor with a demonstrated history of working in the transportation, trucking, railroad industry. Excuse me, I'm extremely sorry. Skilled in signaling and train control systems, GSMR, rail transport, data center, cloud infrastructure, green edge data center, IT management, and project management. The panel will be also joined by Sanjay Agrawal, Head Presales and CTO, who just articulated about the data-driven strategies. And through their collective experience and insights, we will undoubtedly enrich our panel discussion after an invaluable perspective on leveraging data for organizational success and innovation. Myself, Minu, Sirsalewala, Executive Editor, Dataquest, would be moderating the panel discussion for you all. Over to the... So I think this has been one of the few times when we have really transitioned very quickly from the introduction and the keynote to the panel. Hoping not to keep you all waiting. Just to kind of give a context about the panel and the topic that we're discussing, I did talk about it briefly. But of course, we all know that the world is changing faster than we can anticipate or we could have ever thought of. Technology is accelerating, global economy is becoming increasingly interconnected, and the digital economy is raging forward, making it harder and harder for businesses to keep up. Digital transformation is now the key to staying competitive. But the amount of data being generated is growing faster than we can manage, and also growing in value and reshaping the way we live and work, giving businesses the ability to create new opportunities, improve products and services, reach new customers, and increase efficiency. So I think one thing is certain, that there is no digital transformation without effective use of data, cloud, and sustainability powered by AI. So if I could call it, data is the new currency for the digital economy. But as transformation is not without challenges, we are pushing to be data-driven, yet struggling to make sense of our data. Generative AI has given us the power to change the world, but we are still challenged by the cloud. And so given this line of thinking, if I could start with the question which could be common to all our panelists here, is the challenges in implementing data-driven strategies. So if you all can share your personal experience, because you all come with a background where you all are enriching yourself with data all the time. that transitioning to a data-driven business model comes with its challenges. Could you share some of the common hurdles your organization faced during the implementation of this strategy, and what key learnings have emerged from overcoming these obstacles?
Let me just start and take first mover advantage. So there are quite a few things which I think personally, based on whole of my experience, and any change in, for that matter, in any organization or any business comes from the top. So the first biggest challenge which I have seen is the leadership commitment. And so change start from the top. So if leaders in any business, for that matter, commit to the change and then adopt the change, then your problem is resolved. So first thing, the first biggest challenge is the commitment from the leadership. And when I say leadership, from the top most leaders, not the next year or the subsequent year. So that one. The second is the quality of data. We have tons and tons of data, but how good is the data, how reliable is the data is very important. It's like, if you're putting garbage in, you will get garbage out. So GIGO is very old theory. So the quality of data, is the second challenge which I have seen. People say that, we have the data, but data is not giving the desired result. It's not because there is anything wrong in, the system or automation or whatever you call it you have done. If you're not putting the right amount of, the right quality of data, you will not get the right result. So that's the second challenge. The third challenge is, and this is typically in any organization, you may see there are a lot of silos. Silos could be because of the way the organization works. Silos could be because of the organization structure and related things. So what happens, the data is lying in different silos and it's not available for rest of the organization. So that is the third challenge which I see from the data-driven organization perspective. Next is you have the data available, you have the system available, but people are not adopting it. So people challenges. So how the change which you are bringing into the organization, how you are deploying it, how you are communicating it, and how you are creating the demand around it basically. So it's not be push, it should be pull basically. So that is the next category of challenge which I see in general based on whole of my experience. Now ma'am, over to you.
Yes. So here a small correction. I am Annapurna Kuchibhatla from Bajaj Electronics. This is Bajaj Electronics is the brand name, and registered name is Electronic Smart India Limited, EMIL. Okay. So whatever Anil has explained, along with that I want to add another point, that is focus, data focus. Many times the focus to data is missing. That is the reason we are not able to implement that. Strategies related to data-driven approaches is very difficult, that data is not readily available to be taken for decision making or whatever it is. So earlier we all understand whatever programs, softwares, applications, whatever they have been developed, they were from business perspective. Data approach was not there. When OOPS concepts and C++, VC++, when they have started, then the data orientedness has started. Exactly. And of late, it is the buzzword now, data. Even now, many organizations, they are missing what data they should have, where they have, how they have. All these things are not in correlation. For example, in one of the healthcare organizations or hospitals, they wanted to do automate their OR process. When they wanted to do OR process, for each surgery, how much it costs? They want to arrive at genuinely. When they wanted to arrive at genuinely, then they have to understand what are the consumables used, what are the maintenance costs, AC cost, devices cost, equipment cost, doctors cost,
Breaking it out.
everything they have to work out. Okay, device costs, HR costs, doctors costs, all these things they can work out, but what are the consumables they are going to use for each procedure? Then we had to start with listing out all the list of procedures they are doing at that hospital. Okay. After listing out, then for each procedure, what are the consumables they are using? So then we understood that different doctors are using different consumables. Okay, maybe brands are different, maybe quality are different, whatever it is. So who have all this information? It is not only whatever medicines and other things. It is about all perishable items like
This data was not
whatever it is. This data is nowhere available. How will it be available? Okay, it is there in the minds of the people. That is administrators, nurses, patient care people, doctors, and so on. And in different locations, people are using different things. So I think then we have done some 100 iterations before the data is normalized. We made it uniform and perfect. So then finally it is achieved, and this has been rolled out in all the locations. Now it is there in place, so they will be able to implement strategies data
and utilize it, yes. So of course, as rightly mentioned, it's like a buzzword, and as both of them also pointed that it's not available as easily as expected. So your thoughts on the challenges that you have witnessed, because coming from a FinServ, looking at the rural, dynamics are completely different over there.
Yeah.
So
whatever data challenges I had seen, am I audible? Yeah. So whatever data challenges I had seen in the last 2 decades, right, the problems are still pretty much the same. Like it is, organizations have data in some form or the other form. Maybe like the amount of digitization has increased, but then still for the person who is actually consuming the data, still they have a challenge in finding the right information at the right time. And then now of late, like there are like lot of technologies which are available which can enable you to get data at a real time, because with real time replications and then in-memory databases. So technology has evolved, but then there is cost to that. So what is the price what you are going to pay for your data? So that is the key one. So unless like there is a suitable match between the two, it's difficult, like, because see, if I have infinite amount of money with me, then I would probably put my entire database in an in-memory database and get like information, however bad my queries would be or however bad my architecture would be, I would still get away with that to some extent. True. Of course, not to the large extent,
yes.
But still that challenge is there, like data lineage and then metadata management. That is still a challenge. Like that was a challenge like 20 years back. It's still a challenge today as well. Of course, the data which has been creating, like you all would be knowing, like whatever data we have created in the last couple of years is almost equal to the data which was created in the last few decades. True. So data is growing at a very rapid pace, but still this challenge persists. And then there are other challenges as well, like every organization or every department would start off with some business model. And then over a period of time, like what happens is, like there are some practical challenges, or there may be some mergers and acquisitions which may not completely, you will not be able to completely implement your business model.
True.
Because you have to force with the other organizations' data
and
into,
align it with
aligning to your data strategies.
True.
So that is another challenge. So
yes.
So one couple of things which we face is the volume of data, which is humongous, and with the huge amount of transactions which keeps happening, and then of course with that the storage, and then moving the data governance, those challenges are to be solved when you do derive information from the data. The second problem is the culture basically of taking decision making based on the traditional approach. So people have been doing it on decisions based on the gut feeling or maybe on from where they have come from, whatever their experiences are there. They feel कि इसमें तो ऐसे ही होता है, इसको ऐसे कर सकते हैं. So rather than data centric or data driven decision making. So that is another challenge. So change management is something which has to be part and parcel of this the strategy towards handling this. And the third is the lack of skill. Basically, organizations, they lack skill and on data analytics or using the data to derive value from the data. So that is one area which also is a concern which inhibits to deploy solutions around that. So in my opinion, these three are, apart from what my fellow panelists have said, we find these issues and we are working towards resolving, because it is something which is cannot be done overnight, and it is a work in progress for us. Yeah.
Sanjay, would you like to share something from your experience? Because we heard that of course managing data continues to be a challenge. You also highlighted a similar thing that we need to move beyond that now. So your thoughts on your experience
I
from
think
the customers?
experts have already highlighted a lot of things. I want to use one example. Where there was a very interesting discussion in an organization, and they said that we want to use data for threat mitigation, fraud, real-time fraud arrest, and then we went deeper into that. What are the steps that are required to mitigate the risk? The first step is to understand the threat, to identify a pattern. Because unless you understand the threat and identify the pattern, the person who is expert in mitigating the risk is sitting idle. Then we went deeper further into that. 70 to 80% of the time is spent to identify a pattern and detect a threat. Only last 20% is used to mitigate the risk. Then the next question was, why is it taking 70 to 80% time to identify a threat, detect a threat, and identify a pattern to address that? It boiled down to data. Data is not easily available. Data is there, very much there, but we can't see it, we can't discover it. On an average, 4 to 5 hours for simple file discovery. So one of the challenges that industries seeing this as a major is, I have the data, but I'm not able to discover, I'm not able to use it in time. And second part of the problem that gets added with this is, with the digital transformation coming in, huge amount of human and machine data is getting added, and that's 70 to 80% data multiplying every year. Do I have the right kind of data platform strategy in place so that all of this data, which is remaining dark data for us and carries a lot of valuable information about my customers, like sentiments, interactions, feedback, reviews, locations I visit, my online behavior, preferences, loyalty, I'm not able to come to know. So a very strong data strategy to have all of these data visible and monetized with the right approach, with leverage of AI and ML is important. These are the challenges that industry.
So as rightly mentioned, we have kind of identified the challenges. We all are struggling with similar challenges at every sector or organization. So to making sense of this, we all are working on tiding over these challenges. So moving on to the next point, as also Sanjay mentioned, that what's a strategy that you could use to drive value out of the data. So we are working with the challenges. We are looking at cleaning the data, making it available. So if you could also share, so sir, if I could start with you, Mr. Prasad, the strategy for maximizing value from data, so in pursuit of building a data foundation, how do you ensure that your organization extracts the maximum value from the data it collects, and specific tools or methodologies that have worked for you, or you can share your experience from that?
So the challenges like connected with right amount of data and how you can enrich the data, of course, that is also important, because sometimes the attributes related to that particular function may be not be well defined. So so enrichment of data is important, and then having a proper pipeline is extremely important, because you are getting data from multiple sources.
Yes.
So one is the data cleaning tools which are required to be seen, which can integrate with the next stage in the pipeline. Data integration from different sources of data coming in. Of course, then data governance and those aspects are there. And Then the data security, of course, you have to also see that how you are managing the entire data and serving the data to the end user. Like for example, if you are using a AI ML pipeline and you are doing a fine tuning the model and using the model which is relevant to you, maybe a foundation model or a specific model for your requirement, and then deployment, and then how you inference from that, get inference from the entire data to take decisions, or basically use it for the next level of function. So deriving value from data is extremely important, and it requires, right, the pipeline has to be there from which has to be very robust, and each pipeline, each component of the pipeline should gel or basically with the other part, and so that you have a continuous streaming of the systems, and you are able to quickly get the data, the information out of the data extract wherever, maybe it is a CRM. Yeah. So different personas, like maybe the finance or HR needs a certain amount of data, certain operations wants, maybe the logistics team want, the supply chain team wants certain amount, certain type of information from the data. So it can be tailored to their demands of these, and then only the value can come, because unless until the functional teams are able to extract insights from the data, you will not be really able to make it work as such. So, and of course, as we all know that training a model and doing that thing is a very expensive process, because in fact the NVIDIA GPU, the wait time is I think 52 weeks or something for the supply itself. So you have to wait for 1 year to get the GPUs. So that is another challenge from the supply side. Yeah, right.
So anybody else would like to share a specific, example where you have seen value being driven out of a strategy that you've implemented or a tool that you've used?
Yeah. So for getting maximum value out of data, we need to have a robust enterprise architecture. So unless that is in place and the relevant stakeholders are involved, it's very difficult to get value.
True.
So when I mean enterprise architecture, like all the relevant stakeholders like business, enterprise architecture consists of business, data, application and technology. So these teams should come together, and then when you execute any project, if these stakeholders are involved at a right stage, early stage, then the results will be miraculous.
Absolutely.
And then especially when it comes to data, we followed like two in a box.
Okay.
So that is business and data person. They work hand in hand when framing the requirements. It's not like business frames the requirements and then we take the requirements after that and we deliver, and then after we deliver, the product would be different from what the business expects.
True.
So that hand in hand, like business and data, this should happen in sync.
Absolutely. True.
And then there will be no surprises, and if there are any challenges, because initially you assume something, and if anything comes on the way, like you will be able to overcome, and then you will be able to meet their timelines and you will be able to meet their expectations. And that's the right value.
True.
And also when it comes to data, there is always a tendency to over collect data when it comes to data gathering. Like, I don't know, maybe someone else in future will use. So that's the tendency like we have.
True.
Usually organization, because we don't know, kabhi kaam aa sakta hai. That's the attitude like we have in data collection. But in our organization specifically, like the customers and the people whom we deal with, we have to be very, very precise. Like we can't expect them to collect more data.
True.
Like the customers whom we deal with, we are basically a microfinance company. We work in 9 Indian states. We deal with rural aspiring women and we give loans to them without any collateral. And the loan officers, these are not like graduates or postgraduates with MBA degree. These are not those people. These are just 10th class pass outs and then intermediate pass outs. So for them, whatever the tools, data gathering tools you provide, they have to be understood by the person who is gathering and the person who is giving the data.
True.
So when we design the forms, we keep that in mind, and then whatever data is required for processing or underwriting them, only that data we
the
gather.
bare minimum
Yes,
requirements.
bare minimum requirements. We need to be very well aware of the requirements,
Yes.
what you are doing. We need to know our job, and once we know our job, then when we involve the right stakeholders, then we'll definitely get
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
So just to add what both of our panelists talked about, my opinion is, you have to create a data-driven culture in the organization. Unless there is a culture, you will not be having a good strategy, and you will not be successful. And how you can make the culture? Everyone is talking about data now. It's a madness, in other words. So you can do culture based on the data is accessible first of all to everyone. It's based on your data policy, whether it is private or whatever the case may be. So it's accessible and actionable. Data is available, but if you cannot take any action on that,
yes.
there is no use of the data. And then he also touched on it has to be outcome driven.
True.
So, and if you are following this, you can definitely create a culture in your organization. The next point which I see is you start small. Don't do a big bang approach on data. You start approach, you perfect your model by correcting the data and the input data quality, and show a success story. Because people will adopt when they see a value out of it. If a model is not perfect, if data is not perfect, and then you will not be able to drive the culture aspect of it. So these are three things which I feel on in addition to what our colleagues have talked about.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, extending on the same points, data should be trustworthy. So integrity is very important. So in organizations, what happens is different places data is in different forms and at different updation levels.
True.
Okay, so then whatever data reaches the concerned person may not be the same. So every measure should be taken that data will come from the same source and it is not in different updation levels. So whenever it is distributed, every care should be taken that it is integrated and it sends the same message whoever access. Suppose a finance department submits the data, sales department submits the data, same data elements, then it should be the same for a time period. Otherwise people will not believe the data and they will start creating their own data. So then what happens, again another confusion level will start. So data always should be integrated, integrity should be there, and
the
trustworthiness should be there.
Distribution plays an important role.
Then only we can drive that culture.
Absolutely.
And we can derive most of the value.
True. So Mr. Prasad, if I could start with you, we're talking about data infrastructure would play a very important role in this entire scheme of things in terms of, distribution and how the data is stored, and the infrastructure plays a very prominent role. RailTel is a very good example of managing this entire innovative data infrastructure. So your thoughts on that, how is this infrastructure management really important, the key role that it plays in your data strategy, and certain experiences from your innovation? Yes.
Yeah. So, in fact, infrastructure is the when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about the hardware which basically runs all the applications, and then data which is manipulated or basically worked upon by the application. And of course, there is a multiple applications. Sometimes you have to get data through API calls and stuff like that. So infrastructure plays a very vital role, because a robust infrastructure, a scalable infrastructure is extremely important. And of course, I think apart from NVIDIA now, on the infrastructure side, Intel is developing GPU and also a neural processing unit, NPU, which is 1,000 times faster than the GPU. And they're coming with the AI on desktop, AI desktop or AI PC, what they call it. So those infrastructure requirements basically, as I said, is very extremely important from getting the right kind of results or right kind of insights from the data. Of course, we have to, because if a finance function or if a marketing guy or sales guy has to wait for the data to come I mean, if he's told that, okay, it will take half an hour, he is not ready to wait for that much of time. So infrastructure should basically be resilient, it should be scalable, on demand, and the cloud plays an important role in this. So any organization, when they are planning a data management platform, you should adopt the cloud strategy, which should be the first way of going towards that. Because if you even want to do a small POC, like you want to do, as one of my fellow colleague told, that you can start small. So if you want to do a POC, the approach is that it should be on the cloud. It can be your own cloud, community cloud, depending on the regulations and from the regulator, depending on the industry, or public cloud. These days, everybody is using hybrid approach or multi-cloud approach because of the various requirements from the application perspective. So the infrastructure is definitely extremely important. On top of that, how the policies are applied on that for data governance, how the security goes with that data, and it should not be an afterthought. It should be basically a planned approach or design approach one should take when you are looking at your infrastructure side.
So Mr. Sharma, if you would also like to add some thoughts on the data infrastructure.
Definitely, I can write a book on that.
Yes.
So, if you see, we talked about the right data to the right user at the right time.
True.
These are the three keywords which basically we need to focus. Before I talk about this further, there is a hell lot of cost involved, to create that kind of infrastructure. So you need tons of money, and you need multiple solutions. One solution cannot fit each and every ask of your, or demand or ask of your data requirement. So you have to be prepared for multi-product, multi-technology, multi-visualization tool also, depending upon what kind of requirements are there. You need to be prepared for that. And on top of that, he talked about cloud. Cloud is in a very right buzzword, but you have to be very careful, how you use cloud capability and capacity, because it can create a big hole in your pocket too. You even will not be realize, the kind of money, the cloud-based solution specifically for data needed. So you have your data strategy should also come into the picture, that what kind of data you want to be kept in different 3-4 categories. Cloud talked about. I will not go into those details. From John to gold. Bronze to gold. Sorry, I will not go into that. But you need to be very clear. Which data you want to keep at what stage, and then provide the capability of right data at right time to the right user.
Absolutely. So rightly mentioning that, sir also spoke about data governance and security. It also plays a very imperative role, especially given the landscape that we are sitting at, where, every vulnerability on your landscape is like, taking you a step closer to a business damage or a reputation damage or data damage, So talking about data governance is how do you approach data governance and security to strike a balance between ensuring compliance and enabling innovation within your organization? So, strategies or most effective ways of, sensitizing your data or safeguarding it, if you all could share your experiences.
So, we have to have a robust policy in place, and proper framework should be there, and periodic internal audit is very much required. Unless we do these things, we cannot ensure data governance and security. So governance document is different and security document should be different. Security, it is more detailed and specific. And when it comes to security, access controls, in the present day of multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, in this environment, we should be having robust access control policy in place, and periodic audits are very much required. It is very easy to get it slipped from our view if it is not audited periodically.
Just to take this discussion further, you have threats from two kind of resource or pool of people. One is internal, another is external. So you need to protect your data or solution or infrastructure, the whole piece from both the threats. Internal one, you can talk about putting access control, maybe going further down the line, defining or categorizing your data into different categories, by which you can make certain set of data available depending upon which category it falls into. And then for further you put policies in such a way that people internally cannot access what they are not supposed to access. Then you need to look into, when you are moving the data from one system to another system, how secure those solutions are. So those are further things which probably we need to look into when we are dealing with data.
Yes.
Yeah. So coming to data governance, security and innovation, actually these things, right, like of course governance and security go together, but then when it comes to innovation, there is usually a feeling that when you innovate, these security and governance tend to be like speed breakers, or they tend to slow down, but it's not like that. Like what we need to do is we need to identify which are the applications which need to be moved slowly and which are the applications which need to be moved faster. Like for example, any customer in our case, like we have something called as loan origination system and loan management system. So loan management system is the one which is like after giving a loan to the customer, the regulators and all the compliances would apply there.
Yes.
Because how you are maintaining customer data.
True.
So that's where like we should be moving slow. We should be adopting like probably a waterfall model when you are doing that. And then when it comes to loan origination system, this is how you acquire customers and in which geographies you are going to operate, and then how would you respond to any business risk, or how would you respond to fraud. So these are the areas like which needs to be moved faster. So this is where like you would be needing innovation, and then you should be applying technology which would support that.
True.
Like as I said earlier, like currently we have like many options. We have a lot of options like to secure your data or to make your data available to customers. Everything comes at a cost. So you need to decide like which ones are my fast movers, and then where I need real-time access to data, and where it's okay like even if the data is 1 day old, or in some cases like data might be even 1 month old data is also okay. Like when you're submitting to banks, we submit like end of the month report. So that's okay, like even if you put that in a relatively cheaper storage. But then when it comes to security, as our friend mentioned, data classification is very, very important. So every data need to be classified, and that's a challenge. Like a classification, it has to originate from the point where it is being collected. From there onwards, it needs to be secure. So still in that area, I still feel like there is still some gap where we might need some solutions. So
Yes, sir.
So as you rightly pointed out, classification is extremely important because all data need not be treated in a similar way.
Absolutely.
So some data very critically require even you have to encrypt the data at rest or at motion. Because all these activities, if you see, it is expensive for if you have to adopt it for all the data. So classification data is still important, and as per that, the data security plan should be a policy should be prepared by every organization. Of course, security should be a layered approach because one type of security controls may not be so robust in these days of AI ML when the adversaries or the bad actors are using that
Absolutely.
to your disadvantage. So you have to be, should know actually what is happening, what are the threats, the threat intelligence report keeps coming out every year.
So the preemptive approach would work well.
So of course you also have to see the business continuity part of it, how robust is your backup plan, your application plan for the data. And organization to organization, the regulations are different because RBI regulates the BFSI sector, then you have TRAI regulates the telecom sector. you have insurance IRDA regulating the insurance, and then you have the space agency regulating the space programs and all. So it's actually important that you should be aware of all those regulatory requirements, and those should be inbuilt into your policies. And the policy will be reviewed. One time you make a policy and think that it will work throughout the lifetime or data lifetime, that is not the right approach. You have to also review the policies, where the policies are, of course, the audit process is there, and the auditors will give the reports to you, what is working, what is not working, and then you have to actually calibrate the security controls accordingly for various class of data. So those are important. Governance definitely plays a vital role, because you have to also see that certain data which is related to R&D activity should be limited to only those people who are require the data. You cannot just expose the data across enterprise, all the data. And then definitely how the data should be treated, what's the life cycle of the data also is important, because sometimes you have to archive the data, because you may require maybe some sort of audit or some sort of, for example, RTI is there, right to information in the government sector, so you have to give information to the public. So you have to keep the data, maybe even if it is not operational data, it's archive data. So those type of course, another thing is you have to also keep data, because you may like to do predictive analytics on the data, on historical data. So you have to keep that to assess the efficacy of whatever you are deployed in your systems. Operational, I'm talking about operational systems. Maybe your different technology or different type of machines you are deployed, and you want to see how there is a performance. You or even the, let us say, certain things like you did some improvement on, let us say, a CNC machine. You could take example, it consumes, let us say, certain amount of power, and you did some over the life cycle, you did some improvement in the controller, for example, you change the controller, and you want to see how it has affected your the cost of operation, for example, or energy. Was there any energy savings, and to what extent you achieve that on different load conditions, say continuous load or of the machine. So these things will be governed by industry to industry. Manufacturing industry has a different requirements altogether. So one size, as we all know, that doesn't fit all. So the approach towards governance, regulation and compliance is extremely important to factor in this data governance, data management structure which you are going to create, or architecture which you are going to create for yourselves.
So Sanjay, as he also rightly mentioned, we are talking about Gen AI, generative AI tools being used for analytics, for security. So, your thoughts on how can we see them integrating, into the overall strategy and utilizing it more effectively to come to data-driven strategies?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. AI is something that's, that cannot be successful without data. And data will not be meaningful without AI. So AI has to very seamlessly integrate from a data perspective. Now from data perspective, at multiple layers it integrates. When you talk about data foundation, data infrastructure, AI comes and plays a role there. You use AI to decide when to provision additional resources and where to pick up the resources from, so that your enterprise business SLAs are maintained. That's one way to look at from a AI perspective at the data infrastructure level. Second very important role, apart from things like predictive analytics that AI is playing a role in, AI is also bringing a real-time capability for enterprises. Let me just take an example. When the data lands into the organization, some repository, say data lake, and if business wants to analyze or query or discover, the data is generally not visible for hours, although it is there in the system. And the reason for that is, unless the data catalog, which is a primary element of the data infrastructure, is aware of that data onboarding, nobody would come to see. So today, by using a technology like fingerprinting and tagging with AI and machine learning, they are able to discover those fingerprints and populate the data catalog in the data lake so that in real time people are able to see what new events have happened in the organization. So that's the AI and data. Now with Gen AI coming in, people are going forward to implement Gen AI, but they also want to go a little slow to ensure that too much of data exposed to Gen AI should not lead to a problem. So one of the topmost priorities for CIOs is to have a right Gen AI policy. A couple of points in the interest of time, whether you want to have a public Gen AI, a third-party Gen AI, or your own corporate Gen AI. And then you have guidelines and rules for each of them. If I am a guy who is in sales and marketing or finance, I should have certain things like pick one of these only depending upon use cases. Second is, when you are using Gen AI and inputting the data, ensure that the history is deleted. That data should not be used for the remodeling and retraining of other models, otherwise data security would come into the picture. When the output of Gen AI comes in, make sure that it is restricted and not exposed to public, because Gen AI has a capability to reuse those.
Absolutely.
And which is what is known as prompting today. So these are some of the guidelines that from a Gen AI and data perspective people are looking at. And if you have used the data, if let's say these are the departments and I have used partly some data from each one of you, I must take a permission from you to use the data, and I must ensure that the output is not shared with anyone. So some of these things will help us scale with AI and ensure that data is not compromised.
So if I could request quickly the members of the panel also to share your experiences with using AI tools in any of your analysis or challenges if you're faced with that.
Yeah, we use machine learning algorithms for credit underwriting, credit scoring, because we generate whatever data we generate, like we put them into machine learning models. So developing that model, it took time, like because we had to go through multiple iterations to get to the right one, and that's a continuous process. I cannot say like my model is correct, because it evolves. It evolves and then it's continuously learning.
Yes.
So that is one area like where there is lot of dynamism in that. So we keep on tweaking and then finding like whether this is working, this model is working, that model is working, and optimizing the models. And of course, as I said, like of course I might be always talking about cost, because we operate with very thin margins. Any decision whatever we take, first we look at the cost and then how is it going to add business value.
Absolutely.
That's what.
The only another additional point here is that one solution will not fit everything, and that is where the model and optimization of model comes into the picture, and it takes time, to bring your model into the maturity, and then it start adding value to your whole ecosystem.
And another point is first time completion and baselining the model itself is time taking. At the same time, maintaining and consistent updation is also a major challenge.
Yes, sir.
So the large language models, as we know, the generative AI uses that, and so for enterprise, we are working on the SLM part, which is a small language model, and you can use the foundation model and then train on your own data set. But again, you have to put all the guardrails, the security around that, see that it is accessible only to people who require it. So we have done for our codes and manuals. We are like, for example, some design parameters are there which has to be factored in a design. And once you do a design, then there's a multiple stage of verification of the design. Let's say bridge design is there, so you have to check the designs. So those parameters are fed in this model, and then basically check that, okay, the first level of check. So checking, which takes let us say something like 2-3 weeks, can be done in maybe just a day or so, because of course it is only assisting the person who is checking the generative model, the AI model. And then you also have to do some manual check. So certain things which are very mundane can be done through the generative AI process that he has complied to all this checklist. And certain things basically where he has to use the human intelligence. So that human intelligence is applied. So you can improve the productivity and efficiency by using. So we are working on those right now currently.
Sorry.
Yeah. And another area like where we are using AI and ML is like AI especially is, as I said, like our loan officer profile I shared, right? So we have to build as simple application as possible for them so that we gather the data.
Capture it.
So when it comes to KYC documents, so we don't expect our loan officers to enter details. They just have to take photographs. And then they just have to take photograph of their house, they just have to take photograph of customer, and then they just have to take photograph of key KYC documents. And automatically we have OCR engine which runs and which extracts data, and there is a validation engine in the back end which will go and then validate with election commission data if it's a voter ID. So all this happens on real-time basis, but for the front-ending person he is just capturing photo instead of typing or entering, because that involves like he may make some errors.
Yes. So kind of bringing down the error window also.
Yes. And another challenge which is still open is like, because our country is diverse and we are operating in 9 different states, we want to ideally record the conversation and then transcript that conversation into
so
English.
Translation.
Yeah, translation, but still we are not at that stage yet.
You know, 2 more things that came to my mind I thought I'll share with you. The moment we adopt AI and Gen AI, which requires a proper data quality, the AI and Gen AI journey brings in a risk of data quality issue also, and confusion in the outcome, which is hallucination, right? So we need to ensure that during Gen AI journey, the data is not compromised and quality is not, compromised. And how they have to ensure that? Right prompting in Gen AI. For example, if somebody feeds in a question, what was the impact of Ukrainian war on Chennai flooding? Right? Just somebody puts that question, that comment. Trust me, there is no relation. We all know Ukraine war is different and Chennai flooding is different. But AI, Gen AI will go and pick up those 2 data sets and try to blend, try to coordinate, try to do that, and whatever is the temporary ad hoc outcome of those data transactions, that gets placed somewhere, and this question gets placed somewhere, which gets reused later, and that leads to hallucination. So, right prompting, right questioning, and ensure the data sets are not compromised is very important. Otherwise, Gen AI will start showing negative outcome or unproductive outcome.
Parameter called toxicity. Yes. So toxicity, you can see that
happening there.
0.1
Correct.
Yeah. So toxicity is a parameter which you can see that how your Gen AI is performing, and if the toxicity level is high, then you can ignore that result. You should not take into cognizance. If it is 0.02, 0.03 or 0.001, then maybe you can accept that answer from
So
that.
quickly coming to the end of a conversation, I think we have kind of managed, and our endeavor was to capture the kind of life cycle, an organization goes through. So you have your data, you need to put it to use, get the value out of it based on the right infrastructure. So I think we had some excellent experiences and thoughts coming in. We could request the audience to have questions for our experts here, and then we could move on to our next session post that. So we have around 5 minutes for a Q&A. If anybody has any questions for our speakers, please feel free to. Excuse me, could you please help them with the.
Or you can come forward also if you want. No, it's not.
Okay, so most of the data that we are talking about in a corporate experience is a lot of a dynamic. So when you derive the milestones and do a decision making of the data that you have collected, maybe across 6 months or 1 year, so how are we ensuring that we are getting the right record? Maybe I'll quote Annapurna example of your decision of how this works exactly, your data has been changed at the initial stage. So how are you ensuring that you are right chord and take a decision which is at least valuable for next couple of years from down the line?
So first time data creation undergoes number of iterations. So by the time we baseline or we freeze that, by that time whatever is there, that will be fed into the system, right? From next time onwards, system will take care. We have to make these things mandatory so that applications will take care of these things and data is captured only at one place. So always we have to consider data from source. We should not encourage or accept data from different silos. So that is the key.
Thank you. So I hope that has answered your query that, have the right source of feeding and not keep it from various silos. Kind of thing. Yes. Yeah, please.
So as you mentioned that first time you train your data model on the data, and since you are cumulatively gathering the data, so how frequently you revise your model? I mean, is it every day, every hour, every minute? Okay. So what's your practical policy? Because you see that your data is growing, right? And obviously at some point of time environments have changed. Okay? So that means underlying data has changed, right? And after that you have been doing. So the question which is raised is that in your training model, when you are trying to come up with a different model, how frequently you are revising your model?
Base data basically. So
basically, whenever there is a change, you have to, and major change, in fact, you have to tune the model. So tuning is an integral part of the entire AI ML cycle. So otherwise, and basically what happens is when the foundation model is tuning doesn't take much time. In fact, when you have to train the entire model with your own data, that was the first time when you did it. So tuning may take maybe a day or a couple of days, depending on how much changes in the data set has happened or how the environment has changed for completely. Either it is a change of business itself or a new business, then you use a different model altogether sometimes.
So
it depends on.
What you're saying is that unless the implementer realizes that there is a major change in the data, basically you are using the old model.
Yeah, whenever you go through a data change cycle, you have to follow this cycle of tuning.
Yeah.
It should go hand in hand.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to ask is that how will you know that? Because when you are capturing a continuous data, and ideally we should be able to see there is a change in data also arising from the.
That's why there should be a pipeline approach. So any changes are there, they should be propagated to next level and all.
And
So,
in case of initial, the data sizes are often limited, so you have to be aware of overfitting situations there.
The mantra is on need basis. Everything is on need basis. That's it.
Absolutely. I think, at need basis, you define how you tune and train the models, how frequently, and discard the model and pick up a new. I don't know whether your question from a modeling perspective was on LLM front or the data model front.
Data model front.
Data model. So let me add both. These are two different things. So LLM answers came in. Data model, for example, traditionally changing a data model was not easy. So, you define when you want to change the data model at certain regular intervals. But with big data coming in, when you have the semi-structured, unstructured data there are technologies available that will evolve the model based on the incoming data. And they will pick up a model on the fly and build up a model for the new data that's changing on the fly. So those technologies are being used today as well to discover a new model or rather to create a new model automatically and then accordingly change the business decisions because it's automatically sensing the data and changing the model. So both the approaches are there. I thought I'll add this answer.
I'm from technology. Though I'm from pharma industry, I just wanted to ask on the light on licensing costs. I know we all talk about budgeting costs from the very beginning, you know, why do you need this? And somewhere in the middle we flare up looking at what's my operational cost going to be, my support cost going to be, a 3-year licensing model or a 5-year licensing model, and you know, especially you, the sales team, right? They are definitely, you know, good models available, but specific to data, right? All your vendors and support organizations, they thrive for the licensing. I mean, definitely we can't run away from it, but what are the best, you know, models that have been there where we can reuse these licenses, you know, triangulate these licenses so that our budgets are not exploding? Because what Mr. Anil said is that leadership should give everything, you know, they are the top best people to drive these things down.
Correct.
But somewhere down the lane, we in the middle management, right, we look at, okay, this is where we are getting struck, where should we go, this side, left, right, center. Never a back step for sure. But yeah.
But licensing model will depend upon the technology and the solution which you have adopted. You know, some solution will allow you to, you know, what you call perpetual licensing scheme now.
Perpetual data use.
Yeah, so based on that and then pay on as you go and, you know, those kind of models. So purely depends upon what is your requirement, you know, and which tool and technology you are using. Maybe, you know, and then every technology, you know, it's not, it allows you to, you know, someone else is
There's a
using
lot of
today,
dependence. There's a lot of dependence.
you know, other user can use it tomorrow. So they go into the number of users you are using, whether it's user A or user B, it's a material. So then your internal policy, how you know, if any user is just not using the tool, why you should have that license consumed. So then you need some methodology and solution on top of it to ensure that, you know, you take what you call, you track the uses of your tools and solution, and then based on that you decide, you know, whether this individual user is not using, should continue to use, have that license, or you withdraw that license and put it in your license pool, you know, so that someone else can use it.
Yeah, and just to add, you know, ultimately the objective is to reduce the budget, the cost of the total data initiatives. Licensing, of course, is one of the important ones, but it's driven by the vendor who's providing you the solution and tools. Beyond the point, you won't have any control, and as Anil said, you know, you'll have to look into those aspects of it. There's a very parallel initiative that industry is driving now, because licensing sometimes is hitting you badly, and that is, if I am able to reduce the cost of data infrastructure and data footprint, eventually new licensing acquisitions will also come down. So there are many initiatives that are happening, and these initiatives are also becoming a part of sustainability initiative. So something like, can we have data infrastructure that reduces the footprint of the data with different technologies? Number two, can I have the assessment and analytics so that unwanted data can be removed? Third thing, at the data layer, pure analytics layer, we all are, you know, habitual of creating aggregated models, and aggregated models actually cost 200 times more than what the raw data is. Use the technology and see you are less dependent on aggregated models and generate the models on the fly, which today technologies allows. All these things put together will reduce the data footprint and bring the cost and infra cost and licensing costs down. So there are multiple things CIOs are exploring, and hopefully this will bring the cost.
Sanjay is coming from the other side of the table, you know.
Correct.
But the fact is, you know, whatever technology we are talking generative AI, have you ever thought the kind of cost you have to put to do a solution on generative AI? It's mind-boggling. Okay, so everything has a cost, and all these new tools and technologies are much more expensive than the traditional ones. So when there is a business case, and that is where the business demand, push and pull comes into the picture. When you see there is a value, when you are adding either to the top line or the profitability to the organization, and you sell it, then definitely cost does not matter. But if the tool is being put in just for the sake of putting the tool, then cost matters.
Also, I would encourage you to look at open source options as well, wherever possible.
So
I will not recommend personally, because open source is there only for doing experimentation and testing, but not for enterprise users. I'm sorry.
This question is clear. Final discussion.
If I may add in this case is that open source is important to kind of present to the management that there is a value addition.
So here comes your enterprise policy and ethics. To be very honest, I personally never recommend open source to be used for business purpose. Freeware and those kind of stuff, I never recommend.
So we have a topic for the next discussion. So they're very interesting. Sir, I'm taking a confirmation, both of you, for that discussion, at least in Hyderabad.
Open source.
Yes. So because of paucity of time, I would request any of you all to please take your questions offline when we are networking for lunch. We'll quickly thank you to all the speakers for the great insights, making it as interactive as possible. Thank you for the audience for your participation. Moving on to the next session from here. Thank you so much.